So our theme for this month, as Kim mentioned earlier, is back to basics, going through the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind text and just reminding ourselves of these very basic principles, how they work, what they do, and how to use them. So today the title of my talk is, When All Else Fails, Read the Directions. Because sometimes life gets complicated, doesn't it? Sometimes it can even feel like we're in a maze or a labyrinth and we don't seem to be making much progress. But the truth is that we're always in progress. We're always unfolding, just like we talked about a few minutes ago in Standing in the Light. The fact that we don't like what's happening in our lives in any given moment doesn't mean that we're stuck, necessarily. But it may mean that we're not an active participant in our own life experience. So we're allowing ourselves to be pulled, to be pushed, to be delayed, to be manipulated, or just plain snookered sometimes. And when that happens, it's time to get back to basics. That is, to cut through the fog or the maze or the reactive effects and return to the truth of ourselves. Well, we do the same thing here. Every January, we begin the year by getting back to basics in the philosophy. And we revisit the very core principles of this way of life to remind ourselves that it really is not all that complicated or convoluted. It's a simple, straightforward teaching of the principles of life. How we can live them to our own greatest advantage, and what are the easiest and best ways to do that for ourselves. So today in this 4th talk on Back to Basics, we're going to explore how to use these principles of life for our own highest and best good. We're going to talk about how we apply them in our own lives, in our own experiences, in the challenges and the fears and the disappointments that crowd in sometimes on us and demand our attention. In other words, we're going to step right up. We're going to take on those demands. We're going to address life as it lives through each one of us. And when all else fails, we're going to read the directions. Like, here's what I mean. I'm going to pay attention to what works in my life and what doesn't. I'm going to use the resources available to me and not keep looking outside myself to someone or something else to do it for me or to me. I'm going to stay attentive to what I choose and not what I do not want. So here's the first set of instructions that I want to share with you. First of all, God is all there is, or spirit, or divine energy, or whatever you call that source of your being. God is the idea of life, the role model, if you will. So just for fun, and for those of you who have taken my classes, you've already been subject to this exercise. See how many different names you can think of for God. For this omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient being. You may still be uncomfortable from previous experiences in your life with calling the idea of life God. So what else can you call it? God doesn't really care what you call it, whether you capitalize the G or whether you bow your head when you utter the name, because God has no ego. Ego is what differentiates and separates one human being from another. That's not what God does. So I encourage you in your spiritual practices to make a list of all the names and ideas of God that you can think of and keep adding to that list. It's really interesting what pops up in your thinking sometimes when you're thinking about that omnipotent, all-powerful, omniscient, all-knowing, omnipresent, everywhere, equally present all the time. You see how that starts expanding your thinking? It's a way of becoming aware of the vast, extensive, unlimited concepts that we have of this supreme creative power. And when you actually put your attention on it, the greater your idea of it grows. And the greater your idea of God becomes, the greater God becomes in your consciousness. You can see how that works as a balancing onward and upward. So now, the next set of directions is this. Universal mind accepts everything we feed it. It can't say no, because to negate is to limit, and God is limitless. I want to read to you what Dr. Holmes says so well about the fact that this universal mind accepts everything we feed it. What page would that be, do you suppose? Anybody want to take a guess?
52.
52. One of you remembers. Anybody else remember page 52? All of your Science of Mind texts have a page 52. So here's what he says. It has been proved that by thinking correctly and by a conscious mental use of the law of mind, we can cause it to do definite things for us, through us. By conscious thinking, we give conscious direction to it, and it, consciously or unconsciously, responds to our advance along the line of our conscious or subjective direction. It must and will respond to everyone because it is law, and the law is no respecter of persons. We are surrounded by an intelligent force and substance from which all things come, ready and willing to take form through the impulse of our creative belief. It works for us by flowing through us. We can use it correctly only as we understand and use it according to its nature. Hence it follows that if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then it does not. But when it does not, it still does. Only it does according to our belief that it will not. Tell me Dr. Holmes didn't have a sense of humor. But every word of that is truth. It's where we put our attention that manifests. So when we say, that'll never work, that'll never work. Until we change to that can work, that does work, I accept it's working, in which case it works. Wow. If that doesn't clarify the power that we have within us, I don't know what could. So here's the third set of directions. I believe in the power of my thoughts. I believe I can direct universal mind and cause the events of my life. Now, if you were raised in a religious teaching that taught you to be subservient to God, to believe that God is good and nobody else is much, if you have thought that you are but a reed in the wind of a capricious and arbitrary, superhuman, godlike creature, then the statement I just made is probably causing a knot in your stomach, or a pain in your head, or the sudden urge to go through that door and get out of here, while your limitations are still intact. What I said was, I believe in the power of my thoughts. I believe I can direct universal mind and cause the events of my life. Let me say that another way. I believe in the power of your thoughts. I believe you can direct universal mind and cause the events of your life. And here it is one more time. I believe in the power of every person's thought. I believe every person can direct universal mind and cause the events of their own lives. So now we've laid the groundwork. God is all there is. Each of us can live and does live our life with this realization. Universal mind accepts everything we give it, and we can direct universal mind with our thoughts to direct the events of our lives. Now, please note I said our own lives. Our own lives, not somebody else's. We are each in charge of ourselves, and we must accept that for others as well. You are creating your life in every moment. The more you practice what you choose for it to be, the better it becomes. So despite the desire or the temptation to fix somebody else, we must realize that our task is to mind our own lives, our own business, our own consciousness, and grant others the right to live their lives as well. For the vast majority of us, minding our consciousness really is a full-time job. Taking our attention off of that to try and fix somebody else is really only a way of delaying our own growth. So now let's talk about some practical ways to apply this magnificent power which is available through you. Do your prayer treatment work every day. Do it the first thing in the morning. Do it the last thing at night. Next, take your attention off the problem and give your thoughts to the solution. Third, give up judging the rest of the world. Judging others is just avoiding self-evaluation. Judging others is attempting to build ourselves up by tearing someone or something else down. The moment we see ourselves through the eyes of wisdom and love, judgment and accusation dissolve, because they're stripped of any meaning within our own consciousness. And we stop giving away our power to that which is outside us. We attract the events and the people who are in our life anyway. When you love yourself, then, you attract things and people that support you and grow you and reflect that love. Then the energy that you've been wasting in judgment and accusation in the past, now that energy is yours to use in positive and meaningful ways in your own life experience. And next, give up your story. Give up your drama. It's yesterday's news. Recognize the impact of continuing to tell your story. Of abuse, of unrequited love, of addiction, of pain, of suffering. Your story is how you stay focused on the past or on the negative. And then begin to realize the impact of buying into anyone else's story. Whether it's with those in our teaching, who sometimes are still working through their own stuff, or someone who has devoted his or her life to staying stuck in their own stuff. You can still love them and honor them, but avoid wallowing with them. It gets on you if you let it. And it also magnifies in the other person's mind the validity of it. There's an old saying, if you are a person who complains a lot, the universe is going to give you plenty to complain about. Next, recognize your challenges and those of others as an opportunity, as a chance to grow and to learn instead of just thrashing around in them. Manly Hall, who was one of the great teachers of science of mind, once said of Ernest Holmes that He knew how to get this idea of the inner journey, which has been taught down through the ages in almost all religions and philosophies. But Dr. Holmes figured out how to get it out of his head and into his life. What sets religious science apart from almost all other metaphysical movements and all other concepts is this practical application, these ways to use it in everyday life. Starting with, think about what you think about. Think about what you think about. Boy, this one's a biggie. This is a BGO, yes? BGO. Remember that? Anybody remember BGO? Blinding glimpse of the obvious. Remember when you are involved, or remember that you are involved in treatment, in spiritual mind treatment all the time. You're either involved in world mind treatment or spiritual mind treatment. You see the difference there? Get that firmly in your consciousness. It's key to this message. There is often a difference between world mind treatment and spiritual mind treatment. You see, we can think of truth, or we can think from the external condition. We can think from now, or we can react to past experiences, the story. We can think from now, or we can bounce around in the future, what is, or might be, or could be. And in the process, we're constructing that for the next moment. But we get to make our own choices in life. And to know that regardless of what is going on in the consciousness of others, we can be healthy, happy, prosperous, and at peace. Recently, I was listening to a CD recorded by Wayne Dyer in his series, Freedom Through Spiritual Awareness. And he said something I have never heard before. Even though I've listened to this CD series any number of times over the last 10 years. He said, 99.995% of the people in the world today have a roof over their heads, clothes, and food in their stomachs. Yet, how often we are urged to believe that great percentages of the world's people do not. How often the external conditions we are given to react to are skewed, are inaccurate, are untrue. I was stunned when I heard him say that. Not because I'm unsympathetic to the plight of the unfortunate, but because I have been unconscious of the progress made in our world. Because I have allowed myself to be convinced that people are not doing enough for others, or that most of us are selfish and self-absorbed. And I tell you this today, and as I tell you this today, this past week, somebody shared with me a religious belief taught to them years ago, which in essence said, you must deny yourself comfort, convenience, joy, and pleasure by giving it to someone who is less fortunate than you. But the truth is, there's no shortage of those things in the universe or even in this world. When you receive God's gifts into your life, God's not taking them away from somebody else. There's no limited amount of joy in the universe. There's no limited amount of abundance in the universe. And there's certainly no limited amount of comfort or pleasure. And when we come to understand that, it enables us to stand in the truth of universal givingness, which can raise the consciousness of the entire planet. It's not there. It's not that it's not there. It's that it's not being received that makes the difference. Well, do you sometimes think, it's too late for me. I'm too old. I'm too set in my ways. I'm under too much pressure. I'm such influence from the outer world. I've heard people say, if only I were younger, I could do this. Or if I were in a different situation, I could embrace this. If I'd known then what I know now, I could have done ... Well, here's the real question, folks. What are you doing now with what you know now? What are you doing now with what you know now? Because that's all that really matters. Bless where you are. Bless what's happening to you in every moment, and know for yourself that you can be happy and fulfilled in every experience, because you are in charge of you. To bless is to direct your thought constructively, and to be grateful for every experience, recognizing that those experiences are what have brought you to this moment in time. Yes, it's true that it's done unto you as you believe. What is not true is that can't change. Because as soon as you change your belief, you can change your experience. As soon as you begin putting your attention on the solution rather than the problem, you can change your experience. As soon as you cease judging what is outside you and begin honoring what's inside you, you can change your experience. As soon as you release the drama of your past and release what no longer serves you from that in the present, you can change your experience. So pay attention to what works in your life and what doesn't. Use the resources available to you rather than looking outside yourself to someone or something else to do it for you or to you. Stay attentive to what you choose and not what you don't want. And remember, when you are living the life you were meant to live, with joy, with peace, with poise, with power, with abundance, you are laying that same groundwork for those around you. Dr. David Hawkins, in his book, Power versus Force, puts it this way. Each time an individual takes responsibility for the truth of his or her own life, they have taken another step on the pathway to the realization of who they are and why they're here. They have opened up to the recognition of the ultimate source of all existence. And these acts of becoming more conscious are the greatest gifts anyone can give to the world. For the influence of love, compassion, and peace, which develops within, has powerful positive effects on everyone else. And so it is.
And so it is.